It's early summer and Melissa Baum is starting over after a divorce with a move to the small town of McCleary, Washington with her two kids, Josh and Lindsey.
In Tennessee, we lived in smaller communities and we weren't used to living in town. And McCleary was a nice, quiet, small, peaceful town.
And for her 10-year-old daughter, Lindsey, it was a fresh start for a free spirit.
Full of life, like from the day she was born. We used to tease her that she came out of the womb talking. She was just active, bright, happy 10-year-old little girl waiting for her 11th birthday.
But as the summer days grow longer, a shadow fell over Melissa's daughter.
She said, "Mom, I just have this really bad feeling that something bad's gonna happen." And I said, "Like what?" And she said, "I don't know, I just have a feeling." She knew something was coming, but she didn't know what. And then the next night she was gone. Sorry.
It would be a startling premonition of a missing person cold case that has now haunted Melissa and the community of McCleary for 15 years. Lindsey and her older brother Josh were playing just a few blocks from their home on a June afternoon. Then the brother and sister got into a sibling spat about a bike, and Josh left his sister to return home alone.
And he walked in the door not 5 minutes after that, mad that Lindsey left his bike.
Lindsey headed over to her best friend Michaela's house, where she stayed until 9:15. Lindsey wanted to sleep over for the night, but when Michaela's mom said no, Lindsey grabbed her things and began walking home alone.
Well, it was a Friday night, about 9:30, when she left her friend's home. She was going to walk to her home. Her walk would have taken her about 7-8 blocks to get to her house. She never showed up.
Rick Scott was the undersheriff at Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Office the night Lindsey disappeared.
At about 11 o'clock, her mom called 911 and reported her missing. So that began a search of the local immediate area by the McCleary Police Department, some volunteer firemen, and her mother and some friends. We would maintain that search and rescue component for the next 10 days. And that grew to involve over 240 people, ground searchers, air search and rescue, dogs, horseback.
The entire town of McCleary quickly came together, scouring waterways and local woods in the hopes of finding the missing 10-year-old.
Our job was to make contact at every residence along that route.
And because everyone knew everybody in this town, it became personal for those leading the search.
During this investigation, I lost 40 pounds, and it was just from the stress. I thought about it day and night, when this first happened.
Holly Thomas was one of the original investigators working closely with Rick Scott. They both wondered how, in such a small town, a little girl could simply vanish with no one knowing how or why.
I think within 24 hours of all that taking place, I think it was pretty clear that that was not what happened. She could not have done it alone, let me put it that way. She had left her cell phone at home. She had no money on her.
The only thing we've really been able to rule out is that she ran away. The disappearance of a child in McCleary in particular had a huge impact on that entire community. It literally took the innocence of that community and erased it that night.
The disappearance of Lindsey Baum devastated the small town of McCleary, Washington, and broke the heart of her mom, Melissa.
It killed me. It's just like a constant ache in your heart. It just doesn't really go away. It's just always there. Sometimes you notice it more than others.
And as the community rushes to get her back, Grays Harbor sheriffs start to cultivate a suspect list who could have taken her.
At the height, we had maybe 40 people who would have the title of person of interest.
And as they look closer, police soon hear something very strange. When Lindsey's mom suggests that her disappearance may have been premeditated.
There was 2 incidents in the week prior to her disappearing. The girls had been up at the park in the bathroom, and they said a man came in on them. But then he left and took off on a bike. The other incident was her and her friend had said that they thought somebody was following them, a man in a white car.
Police find surveillance video from a local gas station of a white vehicle close to the street where Lindsey disappeared, and at the same time she vanished. But investigators have trouble connecting the vehicle with the stalking story. But they soon zero in on a local business owner who made false statements to police during early interviews.
He denied being in McCleary during the evening hours when she disappeared. Would later find, again, video surveillance that showed that was not true.
The man, a local businessman, told police that he was nowhere near McCleary on the night Lindsey went missing because he was out working. Time-stamped convenience store footage of him making a purchase would say otherwise.
He was in McCleary at exactly that time that she would have disappeared.
And he also offered help in the search for Lindsey when she disappeared.
He was somebody who actually contacted Lindsey's mother that night and was helping her, actually had her in his car and was helping her look around areas that she knew Lindsey frequented.
But his inconsistent statements were not enough to turn him into a full-fledged suspect, and no charges were filed against him.
There were several things that proved not to be true with what he initially told us. That being said, there's no evidence to point to anybody's having any involvement in her disappearance.
Instead, it would take 9 years and nearly 300 miles for any new evidence to further the search for Lindsey. It happens when a group of deer hunters in a remote part of eastern Washington stumble across fragments of a human skull and nothing else. The kidnapping case of Lindsey Baum officially becomes a homicide.
We need the hot tip to come in. We need the person who knows what happened to Lindsey to step forward.
Investigators now believe Lindsey was murdered. No suspects have ever been named in the case, but investigator Scott calls the killer a monster.
Whoever did this needs to understand that we're not going to go away. This case will remain an active investigation, and we're going to continue to work this.
And though her disappearance and death still remain a cold case mystery, Grays Harbor sheriffs hope to help heal the devastated family.
I imagine any parent has felt, at least for a moment, when you lose sight of your child in the grocery store, or they get lost in the mall, or they wander off in the neighborhood. That feeling doesn't go away with time.
Lindsey's mom, Melissa, still holds hope that one day the case will find closure. For her peace and for Lindsey's.
I have to believe that it's going to be solved. And if it's not in my lifetime, I promise I will hunt from the grave whoever was involved. If I have to follow them to hell to do it, I will.